Thank you for coming. We're going to get started with the business of mental health, and we only have about a 30-minute session today, so we'll get right into it. Going over just a few things that are important that you've probably heard a few times now if you've been around this week. We want to thank you guys for joining us. This is the 11th annual Denver Startup Week, and our title sponsors, Amazon, Capital One Cafe, Dell for Startups, and the Downtown Denver Partnership have made this possible. So big thanks to them. This session that you're in is part of the People track that's sponsored by the Commons, Growth, and Slalom. And it's one of 8 programming tracks that are aimed at supporting the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem. So hopefully you get a chance to check out several of those tracks. But we're really excited to have you here today. It's going to be a great discussion. By attending this, you're agreeing to follow our code of conduct, and you know that you might be recorded. So just an awareness there. And be sure to hashtag Denver Startup Week, DEN Startup Week. Thanks again to our sponsors. So this time that we're going to use together is going to be talking about the business of mental health, and here's what we mean by that. Employee well-being is now an imperative for attracting top talent. This is table stakes, and everyone's trying to figure it out. So we've assembled a great panel here, and we're going to be focusing our discussion today on 3 main areas because we only have 30 minutes, as I said. We're going to be talking about awareness. What does it look like just to become aware of this major trend in the social construct and context that we're all experiencing it right now? We're also going to dig in a little bit on a healthy culture. What makes a healthy culture, and how do we stand that up and create that ourselves, because it is a conscious creative process. And then we're going to talk about resources, both for employees and employers, very briefly. We also have an exciting live survey that we'd encourage you all to participate in, and I'll get to that in just a second. But before we do that, let's meet our panelists, and I'll allow them each to introduce themselves, a little bit about their background, and why they're drawn to this specific panel, and what that connection is for them. Sure. Jen?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer Tierney. I am the founder of Parker Neurofeedback and also the COO of Full Velocity Consulting, which is a C-suite a provider of C-suite services to startups and local businesses around town. I got involved in this because I'm the very definition of what happens when you don't take care of yourself in a stressful, whether it's corporate or startup environment. And as a result, I had to take a step back and learn to take care of myself, and through the process was exposed to modalities such as neurofeedback, and I decided that it made such a huge difference for me that I wanted to, bring this to the masses. And so I'm now working on how to integrate that also like in a corporate wellness culture, so individually and as a company.
Great, thanks, Jen.
Hi, I'm Shauna McGregor. I'm the founder of Maverick Public Relations. I have been grinding it out in agency world since 1998, and I've been through a few agencies. And there was always, why am I here? Because agencies have always tended to be just a boiler room of stress and non-transparency and just very much a driving mentality. And so when I founded Maverick in 2018, my goal was to lead with kindness and abundance and team mentality. And and I'm not perfect. I certainly, I look back and I know that I'm not a perfect human being then, and I'm not now, but I continue to try to create systems and support for my team so that they know that they are supported and that they feel like they have boundaries and resources.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Todd Evenson. I'm a founder, an entrepreneur today of an employee benefits brokerage. But prior to that, I've had experience in a large medical association called Medical Group Management Association. So I know what it's like to work with large institutions across the country. And beyond that, here in our local community, I've served as the All Health board chair and was there for 6 years. So I understand a lot of the traditional, I think, mechanisms that we've all thought of and how we access mental health care services. And I know we've all been through the process of stigma. I know we've all been through those discussions. And to your point a little bit, Red, I think those are kind of the table stakes discussions now. I'm hoping that we can all be vulnerable enough, like you can, to be a great leader back at your organizations, because this is a different game. We're in a new environment. Clearly, there are a large amount of federal dollars and state dollars going towards these activities. The challenge is today, a lot of the systems we have in place are already overloaded. So the new ones, we have to be really thinking in new and different ways, and how we lead our organizations and how we share with one another to be well and healthy.
Great, thank you so much. And I'm Rhett Kirby. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Shoulder. We're a non-clinical, non-licensed upskilling platform that teaches everyone else how to be effective space holders and providers of emotional and mental wellness, and then connect them with folks affordably. So we're excited to jump into some great Q&A with our panel, but before we do that, I want to just invite everyone here. We all have our productivity tools, whether it's a smartphone or I see some laptops. Would love to just poll the audience while we're in real time today, while we're listening to the panelists discuss some of these topics. And we have on Slido a way to participate in that. So right here, if you want to scan this QR code, it will stay up during the session, so it'll be on every slide. But if you want to just kind of zoom in on that and grab that, we'd love to ask you just 3 questions, and we'll share those results at the end to just have a little bit of audience participation, just to get a pulse on what's real and in the room with us today, so that we can recognize that. So thank you for your participation there. All right. Sorry, I thought someone was saying something. Oh, the poll is locked. So Bree, if you could unlock the poll.
We're on it.
Bree's on it. Thank you.
I was supposed to start working at 1. If you give me 1 second here.
Perfect. Yeah, so if it didn't unlock, just hit refresh, and like I said, that'll be live during the course of the session. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah. So with the awareness slide, if we could just pull that up, what we're going to look at is, what does this actually look and feel like in today's culture? We all know that COVID brought a lot of mental health issues to the surface. Everyone knows it. We've all been saying it. But it's not just a feeling. It's real data. In fact, between April 2020 and August of 2021, employers reported a 4x increase in employees actually self-reporting anxiety and depression alone. And it's been estimated that this is costing businesses over $1 trillion to date in terms of productivity losses. So we're not just talking about feelings here, we're talking about real bottom line and how those things are connected. Because each of our lives doesn't really mean quite as much in terms of what we're able to give if we're not full ourselves. So this is where we're digging in at the start of this, and we're digging in with the conversation around awareness. I want to start with you, Todd. We were having a conversation just a few days ago, and you made an amazing parallel between the physical dimension of what people can see when you injure yourself physically with medical issues and the invisible, the mental side. Can you just speak to that really quick and
Sure.
talk to us a little bit about how an employer would even go about recognizing what's happening in their own environment?
Sounds great. Thanks, Rod. I think many of us in this room, if we're from Colorado or Atlanta, from one of our dear friends here in the front, it ends up being where many of us are active. We're in an active environment. I imagine many of you ski or hike or think about those types of activities in terms of your own wellness and your own fitness. But imagine it like this. You go out on your big hike or your ski event, you injure your knee and you come back with your cast. And just like we were thinking about in grade school, everybody coming back and being willing to sign your cast, it was almost like a rite of passage, right? It was this really proud moment. But let me just counter that with kind of the dimension of mental health. Now imagine you're the leader of an organization and one of your staff came up to you and said, I thought about committing suicide last night. And in your gut, you feel something that's very different. You don't know how. I think many of us have not thought about how we're going to respond. And that's even true where we've put the dollars behind where people are getting solutions. Right now in the United States, we spend 93 cents of every dollar on physical medicine. That means only 7 cents is left over on every dollar for mental wellness. So when you consider that as a leader, these are the types of scenarios that I would challenge you to think about how you respond. Now, I've got HR friends that's, here comes the risk flag. What do we do when you hear something like that? I would argue, be a great human. Find a way to be more human is the solution. Mm-hmm. And the solution is actually more active listening. But I know what it's like to be that entrepreneur. I'm going to put that hat on for a moment. As an entrepreneur, you're already busy enough. You have 18 different jobs that you already do. You're in a situation where you lack time. You're constantly fighting for new dollars because you're working on a raise. You're constantly doing pitches. And unfortunately, you've probably landed in a spot like I have where I've heard the word no a lot. So when I hear the word no a lot, I had to start to put on my armor and shield myself from the pain you felt from actually somebody telling you no. And I'm quite confident I've carried that around in other organizations that I've led. And it's prevented me from really hearing, is at the end of the day. It's been a fault. So if you can challenge yourself coming out of this environment to think about, in the mental health dimension, how do I respond as a leader that's different because it's not the same experience as a physical malady?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Jen, I'm curious, once this awareness actually hits, once you're starting to be more sensitive and pay attention in the environment, how do you think about starting to shift the awareness and the narrative and the stigma within an organization? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, as leaders or entrepreneurs or owners, we have to be the ones who start it from the top down, right? I think a lot of people are very aware of mental health, their own mental health, becoming more empathetic and sympathetic to others. But if you don't feel that you have a safe space with your boss or whoever your leadership group is, then you're likely not going to want to tell them what's going on in the first place. And who knows what kind of ripple effect that can have, whether it's they think you're performing poorly or you're not keeping up to standards. But I do think it starts with the top down. And then on top of that, like as owners and entrepreneurs, and kind of going to Todd's point, we also have to recognize that everybody does things in a different way. So because I might work 14 hours a day, it's also my business, right? But it is not fair for me to ask my staff or my team to do the same thing. Maybe they want to, maybe they don't. But they also might just do it in a different way, and they can reach the end result the same. So we just have to be supportive not only of people's differences and how they want to do it, but also it is like if you need to take a day off for mental health, it's a real thing, and not to joke about it as an owner and company. You really have to be authentic, and you really have to lead with example.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Jen. So let's shift to Shauna real quick, and let's kind of start to transition from awareness into building healthy cultures. So we're aware of it now. We know that it's data. It's not just stories from people. There's real data behind this, and it's significant. And we've become aware, and we're listening for these opportunities. How, Shauna, in your mind, do you speak to and address an employee or a colleague that's bringing these issues up? How do you create safe culture, and how do you work with other entrepreneurs to do that?
Right. I was going to say that, if someone is actually coming up to their boss and telling them about that kind of problem that they and first of all, let's just be clear here. Suicide is an epidemic, it's a pandemic, and it's particularly an epidemic here in the United States. Too many people are not seeing any future, and we must do something. And so to me, the most important thing is, creating an environment of trust that when someone tells you something that they know they're not going to be in trouble, and in fact, our team is going to spring into action and say, okay, you need a timeout. Now, first of all, how many of you guys know who Brene Brown is? And how many of you are reading Atlas of the Heart or seen that, or the HBO special, Right On Ladies over there, and whoever else? She has this great example that I want to share with you guys. She was a server, and there's a big difference between being stressed and being overwhelmed, and understanding when you're stressed, yeah, you have a lot coming on to you and you don't know how to manage it, but you can still, you have a lot coming on that you don't think you can handle, but you still have a to-do list, and you can be like, Jim, I need you to do this. Bree, I need you to do this. Gina, I need you to do this. But when you're overwhelmed, it's and being stressed is sort of like being in the weeds if you've been a server. And being overwhelmed, if you've ever been a server, is kind of like being blown. And so when you walk into the, wherever, and whether it is a kitchen or our group, our team, and you're like, I'm blown, or my family's blown, or someone, then you need a timeout. Like, you need to know that you have that space, and there's no question. And everyone on the team picks up and figures out, what can we do? Take over the email, take over, the projects, that sort of thing, but immediately understanding that this is a priority.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, it reminds me as you're talking just about that cast analogy that Todd had. If someone walks in with a cast, you don't expect them to lift things and carry them across the room. You know that they're things they can't do. But what does this look like in the invisible world? And creating a safe culture for those discussions to happen, that's fantastic.
And respecting them when they are not visible, really hearing it and believing it. It's so easy to not believe it if you've never experienced death in your family or, illness in your family. It's really easy to be like, oh, well, that doesn't really matter. But having empathy and understanding is so important.
Yeah, that's great. Another interesting stat that we'll just kind of share as we're talking about healthy cultures. This is really interesting. 82% of people that have been diagnosed with some type of anxiety, depression, or other mental health concern do not share it with their bosses, their employees. So this is really, really high. So when we're talking about healthy culture here, this is extremely important to create a safe container for ourselves and our employees. And Jen, I loved how you talked about this starts with me. It starts with ourselves. Can you tell us just a couple of things that you do as a business owner to set that standard in your company, to lead by example in these ways? How do you take care of yourself? If you don't...
One of the first things that I had to learn was to give myself actual and real downtime. On a weekend, I have to say, I feel very guilty if I'm not busy or productive or checking things off a list. And, all of these things we've been taught historically, like this is what success equals. And so one of the very first things I had to do was teach myself, like, it's okay to take 8 hours of a day for yourself, right? Or just for anything. And then same with teams, it's like with my staff, I don't want them working 12 hours a day, and I don't want them working on the weekends, and I don't want clients contacting people after hours and feeling like this constant need to always respond to stuff or to, meet crazy deadlines and things like that may not even be a reachable thing. I mean, we got to look at what's attainable, what's reasonable, and then just take care of ourselves, whether it's working out. I do neurofeedback, obviously, since I own a practice, eating healthy, enjoying your community and your family and your friends. But for me, like, the biggest thing was to just say, it's okay to take some time off in a week,
That's great. Yeah, please. Yeah.
I think it is so important to understand what your guardrails and your boundaries are, and that your boss or your team respects and understands that. One of the first paragraphs in my onboarding document is, email is email. It's not text. It's not a phone call. When an email comes into your inbox, you're not expected to answer this immediately. And, and I function under flex time. I might, I work 8 hours a day. It's my company, so I often work more, but that's my own choice. But I don't care if it's from 9 to 5. Some people are night owls. Some people, whether you're a mother or you're a father, want to be able to pick up your child and be with them from 3 until 9. And you want to give that space. And so I just think that's important to...
That's great. Yes. It sounds like what you're saying is grace for yourself, grace for everyone else, and it starts with you. Yeah, that's awesome. Let's move to Todd real quick. And, we're going to transition again into some resources, just some practical tools and awareness of what does this look like within companies. Another interesting stat, the best surveys and the best studies right now that are being done are showing that for every dollar invested into mental health into employee benefits and mental health, another $4 in productivity gains is actually generated from these investments. So again, we're tying these really important cultural dynamics to real bottom line results for companies. So what does this look like to invest in employees, or to have a company invest in us as we're working for them? Todd, can you tell us a little bit about EAPs? What are they? How do we know? Most people are probably familiar with what they are, but can you tell me how that landscape is changing just a little bit? How are you seeing this? Because you are in the self-funded insurance world, and you're seeing companies start to take a little bit more ownership in these ways. What does it look like?
Sure.
What's the landscape?
Sure. When I think, interestingly, just kind of based off the conversation that my two panelists have just started to explore, I think when I've looked towards businesses, interestingly, we've all been so busy that we've looked for the easy button in terms of dealing with mental health. We've looked for the easy way, such as EAP. Not that I'm saying it's inappropriate and not a great resource, but I can spend $2 a month to let somebody go ahead and call somebody they don't know. That's what EAP, at the end of the day, there's a trained therapist, employee assistance program. You can do this as an employer and find those resources as an entity. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I'm just saying it's one of the layers. But the challenge that I've really found is even as when we thought of as organizations how we're dealing with mental health issues, we've done things like this. Instead of on your paid time off, you have sick time, you have vacation time, now we're just gonna add something called a mental health day. And I would argue that's usually a bunch of crap, because that's not far enough. Because why do you think time is the only dimension when it comes to healing a person in terms of their health? So what, pretend this person is suffering from depression. Well, are they gonna go home and sit in bed at night or all day long and that's healing because they have time to sit in bed? No. If you go to Johan Hari or some of the other great thinkers that are out there, the opposite of addiction is connection. So what are you doing to connect and support and be more human to your staff? I think that's the actual trick. It requires listening. It requires your time, not necessarily their time. But to your point, not everybody's going to share these experiences with you. So you're going to have to asking in a different way. So when I think of an employee assistance program, it's a part of a layer set. It's not just the only solution, but it's a part of the solution. I think of traditional vehicles such as community mental health centers, therapists, the things that we're all used to, that we're used to paying for and them running through an insurance program. I think of programs like Shoulder, though, that sit outside of that because those systems are already too taxed. There already aren't enough therapists. And I went to an event last night at MSU, and Metro State University. They said 50% of applicants for social work are rejected. Why? Because they don't have enough space to teach them. It's not because there aren't enough educators. It's not because of all of these other things. We don't have a pipeline for those items. So there's these big systemic things that we have to consider and where we invest in. But you, as an employer, if you're in this room or an HR leader, I would argue to say, what are the deepest ways I can find connection to where it's safe to talk about? Maybe it's not you as the leader they're comfortable with. But do you have a peer system where if Megan doesn't feel well, you know for sure she can talk to Sarah? And then there's a safe way in your environment to share those types of shared experiences. But when I think of, again, the tool sets that are available to you, what's important as you as a business owner is really take the time to invest in understanding what is available in the space to you. Quite often, through big, large insurance companies, they have an employee assistance program. It's already embedded. But do you even have it posted in your break room? Do you have it emailed to the staff? Does it go straight into their spam because it's coming from United or Aetna and they aren't looking at it anyways? What time are you investing? So the time comes from you, not necessarily from the employee, and fight for connection.
I was going to say also, good luck finding a therapist or a psychiatrist that takes insurance.
That's right. So the question was, good luck finding a therapist or psychiatrist that takes insurance.
Or any therapist at all right now.
Right. Great point.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
some of the solutions over
Yeah,
there.
thanks, Todd. I love the idea of why is time the only dimension when it comes to healing? And looking at connection as one of the balms that we need to be focusing on and facilitating that in a healthy way, in a way that makes sense for every employee. I'm curious from you two ladies, as we just kind of get ready to wrap up, what are some of the ways that you've seen most effective in your organizations for creating this connection, or what other resources do you provide within your organization, or do you think are emerging to help balance things out with the traditional kind of old school EAP, which is still serving its a strong purpose? But what does this look like in both of your experiences?
Well, I just want to note something that you said, and we're very much on a non-linear path in our quest for mental health, and we're in a very disruptive time right now. Social media has done this to us. It has. I'm going to not use my potty mouth today. It has messed with, it has taken logarithms and pitted us against each other. The only thing that is going to cure what ails us is community. Like, we must have community. My company, Maverick Public Relations, is non-traditional. We have an office. I'm never there. Some of us are, but it's there for people who want it. But we are a bunch of self-starters. But the biggest solution in our group, I hope and I think, is that I am open, honest, and transparent about my feelings. I no longer just try to bottle it up and hold it inside. If I'm having a problem, I explain. And so I hope that my transparency and honesty and openness with my issues gives them kind of gives the rest of the team. Mm-hmm. And I don't really consider myself a boss. I consider myself a part of a team. Mm-hmm. And I hope that we can all move forward together. And I just want to also say, Brene Brown, of course, my spirit animal, every single book, Dare to Lead, Atlas of the Heart, she's got that series on HBO. Understanding the words that you're using and how you're using them. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing that I'm currently looking into, and I haven't completed it yet, is that there is a vital cog suicide prevention in the workplace at the Helen and Arthur E. Johnson Depression Center at Anschutz. So, and it's extremely affordable. So for any owners, leaders who have that ability, I would check that out. It's extremely affordable. I don't want to say prices and mess up on it, but I will be doing that soon, and I'm looking for people to join me. Whoops. It's called it's called Vital Cog, the Suicide Prevention in the Workplace. And it's at coloradodepressioncenter.org/vitalcog. And I'm just, I work in an industry that's really, really going through a really tough time right now. I think a lot of us, I'm not alone in this. And I don't want another person to die on my watch. If someone has a problem, talk to me. I'm going to figure out how to help you. We will figure something out. You have a community. You have people who care about you. Please don't leave us.
Thank you.
So when I worked in the corporate environment, I ran our wellness program that was in conjunction with traditional healthcare, which is great, right? It provides, gym memberships, or let's go for a walk as a team. Let's have some lunches. We brought in yoga instructors and taught, meditation and all these things. And we probably were one of the more active type of groups doing that. And so what I do now is I spend a lot of time, trying to share with other business owners and just individuals in general, new, holistic, different types of approaches that we can bring. Because by the way, while insurance is great for all of us, there's a whole nother world out there that doesn't fall in that category, which is what self-funding is good for. But nonetheless, as an employer, you have the ability to kind of, provide your staff whatever it is that you want, that you're able to do. And so things like neurofeedback can be done in the office. My business partner does things like AccuDetox, which helps with stress and different things, and it can be done while somebody's sitting at their desk. Again, keep doing the massage therapy and the meditation and yoga and stuff like that with your group. But there are many, many, many other options out there now that are becoming actually much more well known. Why? Because modalities like therapy aren't available to people. And it is a crisis, and especially if you have children. Children's Hospital last year declared, children's mental health as a crisis. So we're having a hard time. And so there's other ways. Nothing replaces each other, right? But they all work together. And if you're doing if you're already working out and you're eating healthy, for example, let's add another step to that. And if you're not, let's also get someone in the office who can help coach on those things or, do that type of stuff. So there's so many different avenues that we can all take as business owners and individuals, not only for ourselves again, but for our team. And I feel like that really shows that, I think back like when I was a team member, what would have made me feel better in my situation? Because by the way, I, left under a very stressful situation. And, I just think about it, like having people there and having resources and being offered these things. And again, that safe space, that just knowing that the top leadership cared would have went a long way. But also knowing about other resources that were out there would have been huge.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much, Jen. Are we ready to share some results? I'm just curious what's going on in this room. We're just going to have Bree pull those up real quick, and then we'll get this all wrapped up. While she's doing that, if any one of our three esteemed panelists have any last-minute thoughts of just a 20, 30-second takeaway, just be thinking about what that is. But here are the results. So it looks like the big winner here was average, that the company's mental health culture is about average. We're seeing a slight tendency towards good, and then a little bit of very poor, very good. I think that's, I think that's probably indicative of the quality of the people that are here, as well as the part of the country we're in and some other things. That'd be interesting to kind of layer this up against our overall demographics of the U.S. As a whole. But let's look at the next result, if you would. Oh, this is the one question. Got it. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you all for participating in that. All right, anything in closing? We just have a couple minutes, so about a 20, 30-second takeaway, anything that you want to share?
Yes, the one thing I would like to say is if any of you out there have not experienced a mental health crisis, it can be difficult to understand what that feels like until hopefully you never do, but the numbers say otherwise. And I would just ask that you remain empathetic to your peers and to your staff and to your family and to your friends if you haven't experienced something, because it is very difficult. And when you feel like you don't have anyone, it's tough to get through it. And, like I said, hopefully it doesn't happen for you, but it likely will. And so just, think about how you'd want to be treated if you were in that position.
Thank you.
I guess I'll just say I've learned, I'm Gen X, I guess, and I've learned so much from my younger peers who have taught me how to not put up with the BS. And so I don't think this is a top-down. I think it's very circular. And, yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks.
Yeah, I would just close with... you have this great opportunity leaving this session, I think, to be intentional. And what I mean by intentional is that I know as a business owner, if you're here at Denver Startup Week, it's lonely at the top. And the likelihood is if you have 5, 10, 15, 20 employees, you're in a situation where half the employees are family members, spouses, or friends. And they're great. Don't get me wrong, I love all of them. But you likely aren't getting the same feedback that you may from somebody else that can give you honest, different feedback. I'll use an example of colleagues like Red of mine that I know I can lean on, and he'll put me in check sometimes, right? Like I can learn from him, and he can give me an outside opinion or an objective opinion around how I'm feeling or what I'm seeing. So you, as a leader, have an opportunity to demonstrate to your staff that, I went out and found a mentor that I could lean into. I can lean on Megan and call her and ask her things that I don't ask anybody else. And I know she'll share with me, honestly, solutions. I don't have to feel like it's inside the workspace at that moment, because I know how hard it is for you as a leader. So when you think about when you leave this session, I hope it's simple as being intentional. Find somebody that you can lean on so your staff can feel like they can find the same in you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. One more big thanks to all of our panelists. And one thing that we want to share is next week, we're continuing the conversation. This group of panelists and myself will be just up the road here, just a block or two up the road at a place called the Local Drive. This is a golf and cocktail lounge, and we're hosting a happy hour to continue this conversation, to dig in a little bit more with some great experts in the field and, you know, understanding what bringing this culture, this awareness, and these resources into your environment can really look like. So we'd love to have you join us. Spread the word.
Big shout out to Local Drive, too. If you guys haven't been there, it's so cool. So,
Yes. Yeah.
fun place.
Yeah, it's a new place. It's just a couple months old. So if you haven't been there, come check it out with us next Thursday. Again, thank you.